Welcome to the Confluence Parenting Podcast. We are here to motivate you and inspire you to become predictably calm, present, and proactive in your child's life. All parents are welcome here. A confluence is a coming together like two mighty rivers, a combining of strength. And this is what Confluence Parenting stands for, coming together, parent and child, to bring about joy and calm in the home. Join us now on the Confluence Parenting Podcast. Welcome to a retooled version of the Confluence Parenting Podcast. I am so excited today because I have a special guest with me on the show. This is Sarah R. Moore, who is just an incredible human being, and I've had the privilege of getting to know her through a variety of ways, but she's the one who helped train me to become a parenting coach. She is an author. She has her own parent coaching umbrella of work, including social media as well as other trainings. She's a public speaker. Sarah, thank you so much for your willingness to jump on our podcast here today. Welcome. I'd love to invite you to introduce yourself and your family to our Confluence Parenting Podcast listeners.
Absolutely, Brandon. Thank you so much for having me. I think the world of you and the work that you do. So I'm really glad we get to chat. As you mentioned, I am Sarah Moore. I usually introduce myself ever so awkwardly with the middle initial R, because if you Google Sarah Moore, you get 10 billion of my closest friends with the same name. So that's my name. I am the author of Peaceful Discipline. I am the founder of Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting. I am a board member for the American Society for the Positive Care of Children and a master trainer of conscious parenting. I've got training in everything from conscious parenting to child development, improv comedy, interpersonal neurobiology, all sorts of things that really relate to parenting inside and out. So as far as my family, we live just outside of Boulder, Colorado. I always say I have 2 children, one in heaven, one on earth, and one husband. So, and 2 cats, Noodles Macaroni PhD and Disco Thunderpants Esquire. So that's our family.
Oh, I love it. Now, I've always been intrigued, and we've talked about this here and there before, but just your background in improv, that just strikes my funny bone in just a really cool sort of way, because I have a flair for the dramatic as well. So as far as improv, how did you get your start in improv, and how have your skills involved in that crossed over into your parenting life?
Great question. I actually, before I started this whole parenting thing, worked in corporate America for 20 years. And little known secret, I'm actually 200 years old. So I've done a lot of things in my life, but I worked in corporate for 20 years, and I was in a very high visibility, high pressure job in all of the executive leadership programs. My brain was really busy all of the time. And I knew for my emotional well-being that I had to do something focused entirely on levity and joy to bring more balance back to my life. So at night, when I was done working, I went to improv comedy school and learned alongside some really phenomenal human beings about how to live more joyfully, how to be more present, how to handle the unexpected. And all of those things are certainly parenting related. That being said, the biggest takeaway that I apply to parenting on a regular basis is the concept of yes and. In improv, if I walk onto the stage and one of my stage mates says to me, "Grandma, I'm so glad you're here," guess what? I am suddenly grandma. If they tell me I'm a kitty cat, I'm going to start meowing. I don't get to say no. I just have to work with whatever I am handed. And likewise, people have to work with whatever I hand them as well. How this relates to parenting is it ties really directly into things like emotional validation and respecting the child's authentic experience for whatever it is. So for example, if I have a child who is afraid to go high on the swings, my job isn't to say, "What are you worried about? That's not scary." My job is to say, "Yes, I see that's scary for you. And let's find some ways to help you be comfortable. That might be getting off the swing, or it might be let's increase your resilience somehow. But it's always a yes and, as opposed to talking somebody out of whatever it is they're feeling in that moment.
I absolutely love that. And now tying back to your career in improv, what was your like greatest moment in your improv career? Like just one moment that stood out that was like just really enjoyable or maybe absolutely hilarious. What's one thing that stood out to you?
My answer might surprise people because it's not necessarily about something that I was doing on stage, although I certainly had some very funny moments up there as well. But some of my favorite improv moments were actually as a student. I trained alongside some of the writers for Saturday Night Live, the popular TV show that's been around forever now. And to be able to learn directly from those people, have those people know my name and tell me, Sarah, this is what you're doing great. Sarah, this is what you can work on. And to be able to really see inside the minds of the people who are supposedly some of the funniest, most talented people on the planet was such an incredible gift. It was humbling. It was at times humiliating, but it was all such an opportunity to grow and see how much these people lean into the unknown and simply trusting the process. And that's so much of what parenting is too.
Awesome. And what a neat chapter of your life, just, and the season that you were in there, it's awesome how that still infiltrates your current life as a mama. So that's fantastic. Now, speaking of your life as a mama, in reading your book, which I absolutely loved, I bought the paperback, the just the real snail mail type book, and then I lost it. So then I thought, but I want to read it. So then I got the audio version, which was very well done, by the way. And then about 3/4 of the way through, I found the book. I have 2 copies, but really enjoyed it. Now, towards the beginning, you talk about your intro into there must be a better way. And so take me to that situation with the doctor's office where you were kind of awakened to there must be a better way of interacting with children. What was that story about and what did that mean to you?
Yes, definitely. So when my daughter was 4 months old, so she was itty bitty, I took her in for her standard well check visit. And as far as I knew, she was doing great. She was where she was supposed to be developmentally. All the things were picture perfect, aside from, of course, normal new parent anxiety. But at one point, the pediatrician looked at me and said, "How's sleep?" And I thought, well, she's 4 months old. I think according to all the books, she's not actually supposed to be sleeping a whole lot yet, at least not consistently through the night. So I told him that she's still up a lot, but I'm okay with it because holistically, she's getting plenty of sleep and she's doing everything she's supposed to be doing. And he looked me square in the eye and he said, Sarah, don't ever pick her up when she's crying. She's manipulating you. When you're ready to leave her, let me know, and I'll help you get serious about parenting. And I absolutely froze. We know what the nervous system does, fight or flight or freeze or fawn. My nervous system went into freeze mode where I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. We somehow muddled through the rest of the appointment. But by the time I was home that afternoon, I had fire in my belly. I was so incredibly livid that this man was telling me not to pick up my newborn baby. And I knew instinctively that that couldn't possibly be right. So I started doing all of the research. And as it turns out, yes, we should pick up our babies. And yes, we should console our older children too. We never lose the need to be comforted. And he was working with some really antiquated information. By the way, happy ending, we did immediately switch pediatricians to somebody who was much more current and responsive and all the things. So we made the change. But when he told me to get serious about parenting, I said, darn right I will. So that's when I started to step out of corporate America and into every training that I could possibly take about child development. I started with Raffi for the Raffi Foundation for Child Honoring and went on through multiple certification programs and started interviewing experts from all over the world so that next time you don't know what you're talking about, I could say, actually, I do, and not just be some random mama on the internet sharing my opinion, but actually be able to point to every single resource that I knew of so that I could help empower other parents so nobody would ever have to be in a situation like I was ever again.
Wow, what a story. And that you moved beyond the freeze and you were able to then dive in and to really find some answers and seeing the ripple effects of that moment when you had that fire in your belly and then thirsting for information, getting all that information and certifications and becoming an expert and in the field, and then being able to impact so many lives, so many parents, which then in turn impacts so many children. I love the name of dandelion seeds, and that instantly brings me back to my childhood of blowing the seeds all over the yard, and my dad would get mad about that, but love. I think every child loves dandelions, whether it's giving a bouquet of them to their parents or whatever. But for you, how did you arrive at the name Dandelion Seeds?
I love this question. Thank you. It's actually threefold. Number one, oftentimes those things that we blow off the weed, we call them wishes. And we all, as parents, have wishes for our children, wishes for how their lives will turn out, wishes for the kind of parent we want to be. So part of it is rooted in the wish concept. Part of it, honestly, was that at the time I named dandelion seeds, dandelions were my daughter's favorite quote unquote flower. So it was partially just a reference to cute little kid thing. And she was adorable doing exactly what you described with the dandelions. And then thirdly, there is a concept in temperament where some people talk about dandelion children versus orchid children. Now, dandelions, the weed, are incredibly resilient. You can practically set fire to a lawn, and 3 hours later, you've got a field full of dandelions, right? Dandelions are the most resilient thing out there practically. Now, orchids, on the other hand, I can sing them songs, play them classical music, have, like fancy dinners delivered for them. I can do everything right with an orchid, and it may or may not flourish. It's kind of like that with temperament styles when you look at the extreme temperaments of children. Some kids, rough and tumble, can handle anything life throws their way. Orchid children tend to be the more highly sensitive children who need that extra care. They need that extra nurturing. They need that extra support. So in calling the business Dandelion Seeds, Positive Parenting, it's let's plant seeds of resilience in every single child in the world to help them grow and thrive, even if their situation might not have been ideal.
I absolutely love that. Thank you. And I don't have any orchids in the house, but I might have to get some just as a reminder of that illustration. So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So now, thinking of your life as just a parent, so apart from the coaching, apart from the business side of things, for you, when it comes to co-regulation, which I think is just a phenomenal idea that teachers in a school setting don't think of, and most parents don't think of, in terms of helping their children get to a place of calm. If you can think back in your memory banks, not too far back, what's one victory recently where you were able to co-regulate with your daughter to help both of you come to a place of calm?
Yeah, so just last weekend, we had a whole bunch of people at our house, including about 7 children who we didn't anticipate showing up.
Okay.
And I am not personally accustomed to suddenly having 7 children in my house, particularly if I've never met them. Very high energy. It was really a lot. My daughter is more on the sensitive side, gets sensory overload, that sort of thing. So to suddenly have all of this energy in her space wasn't exactly the best setup, especially since we didn't prepare for it ahead of time because we didn't know what was going to happen. Well, there was this one little guy, and bless his heart, he was, I think, about to turn 3 years old. And he had all of the exuberance that a stereotypical 3-year-old has. He had his shoes on and was crawling up the furniture. He was doing all sorts of things that perhaps we didn't really want him to do. So I was trying to positively redirect him since the caregiver who brought him wasn't really doing anything about it. And I wanted to save my furniture, I'll be blunt. So I noticed that some of the other kids had tracked in a whole bunch of mud from the back door. So I went and grabbed a rag and started wiping up the mud. Well, I invited the little guy to come and I said, do you want to help me wipe up the floor? And he was so excited. He's like, yes, I want to wipe up the floor. So together we wiped up the floor and we were having fun together doing this cleaning task. But it was, it was extra uncomfortable for my daughter because I was taking attention away from her when she was already dysregulated. And by the time all of these kids left, she was like, Mama, where did you go? Where was the support for me? What happened? And she was really upset with this one little boy in particular for the things I mentioned, but actually for a whole bunch of other things I didn't even mention, like breaking one of her toys and stuff like that she was legitimately upset about. So first thing I had to do was to regulate my nervous system because I was also overwhelmed from having all of these humans in my space. And I need time. I'm an introvert, even though I'm a very extroverted introvert, I'm an introvert. So I need my quiet time after large group settings. So first thing I had to do was really just get back in my body. I had to wiggle my toes. I had to breathe deeply. I had to, say a prayer to help ground myself. I had to do lots of little things to help remind me this is my space. I am safe here. It is no longer sensory overload. I also had to do a little bit more cleaning because there was stuff everywhere and suddenly I had clutter overload too. So that was how I started regulating myself. That being said, I could only get so far because I also had an upset child. Yeah. So I had to pause what I was doing. I got myself to a place where I was regulated enough. And frankly, in parenting, that's often the goal. Just get ourselves regulated enough. It doesn't mean we have to go take our bubble bath first. That rarely happens. But if we can get ourselves to a point where we are no longer over the edge emotionally and we can more or less handle things, that is the optimal time to co-regulate. So I was able to say, I see how upsetting that was for you and validate her feelings. And I was able to simply keep asking the questions, tell me more, tell me why this part bothered you. And essentially doing talk therapy for kids, even though I'm not a therapist, I was helping her verbally process and create a coherent narrative of what was stressful about her day so that she could make sense of it, all the while hugging her when she wanted hugs, letting her be on my lap when she wanted to be on my lap, offering that physical reassurance, eye contact because she's comfortable with it. Plus, we know that all emotions are contagious. I had to be emotionally grounded enough that she could borrow some of that because it's not something that she was going to be able to create enough on her own without my support. So bottom line here for people who are listening, get yourself to a place where you are calm enough. You don't have to be all the way calm. You just need to know intellectually you're going to be all right. And that's the optimal time to really start showing up for the child. Because if you've got nothing to offer, your child will pick that up too. So it's perfectly okay to take a couple of minutes and calm yourself first. It's not completely the oxygen mask metaphor that you hear so often, but it's, I see that you're struggling too. So I'm going to put my mask on while I'm also putting yours on.
At least get a few breaths of oxygen in there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's so powerful. And the whole idea of co-regulation was a game changer for us. For me, I come from a long line of yelling, angry people, and it's so easy for me to lose control and lose my temper. And one of my biggest triggers is other people's anger. And so when my youngest son, who also he does everything with gusto, that should have been his nickname. When he gets upset, when he is dysregulated, it's really hard for him to slow down as far as the things that he says, the things that he does. And if I'm triggered, then that it's like throwing fuel on the fire. And in those moments when early on, as I was going through training with you, being able to realize, what, if I can get my stuff together, then that gives me a fighting chance to be a predictably calm parent for my son. And seeing that melt the rough moments and helping him to realize that he's been seen and helping him realize that he's understood. I think that has been just a huge thing. And there's always room for growth there for me as a parent there. And I think every parent can say that. But that whole concept of co-regulation is ginormous.
Yeah, and I want to say for anybody who's listening to this that your trigger of other people's anger is so common because so many of us learned when we were little kids that other people's anger is scary and or dangerous.
Yeah.
So our inner child is still with us always. That doesn't ever go away. So even if it's our child's anger coming at us, our inner child is still telling us the message, this isn't safe, this is scary. So I want you and everybody else out there to know you make sense, this is normal, and the more you can nurture that inner child while you do this work, that co-regulation piece is still going to help your inner child too.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, shifting gears ever so slightly, let's say for some odd reason, the universe says, Sarah Armour, if you could only give only one piece of parenting advice for the rest of your life through your coaching, your social media, but if you had to have just one thing you could tell parents, odd question, and I don't think that will ever happen, but let's say you could only give one piece of advice to or flustered parents, what would that one piece of advice be?
Gosh, I would say I have this 292-page book you can read that sums it all up. But seriously,
that was a good plug. That was very well done.
Thank you. Yeah, not awkward at all, right? I think what I would probably say is be gentle with yourself. Because so much of the inner, for lack of a better word, or maybe this is the best word, so much of the inner violence we feel really comes down to, can I be gentle with myself? Can I show up for myself? Can I take care of my own heart in this moment? Because when the answer is yes, when I can show up and be gentle for myself, that ends up being what I have to give to others. We only exude what we're feeling on the inside. So the gentler you can be with yourself, the more you will see that ripple effect around you.
I was not expecting that to be your answer, but that was such an amazing answer. Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
Good. And the book part was good too. All right. So now I know that you consulted your daughter with this question. So looking back in your time so far as a mama, what's been your most embarrassing parenting moment?
I'm going to blush even as I say it right now because it is not one of my finer moments in parenting. Just a couple of years ago, I'd like to say it was when she was itty bitty, but it wasn't. It was just a couple of years ago. She's 10 now. We went to a playground and there was a swing set. And she loves to swing. Heck, I think swinging is fun too. So we said, yes, let's swing. However, because she was probably 7 at the time, maybe 8, she said, I'm going to take the big swing. Well, all that was left was the baby swing. And I looked at it and I said, I'm not going to fit in there. And she said, Mommy, you're right. You're not going to fit in there. But then I had to go and take that as a challenge. And I looked at the leg holes and I thought, I'm pretty sure that this is somehow a ginormous baby swing and I'm going to be able to fit my adult size leg inside there. If nothing else, I'll only go partway in and I'll just be silly about it. I like being lighthearted and doing goofy things. It's just part of who I am. Well, I didn't intend to put my leg all the way in, but there's this funny thing on earth called gravity. And next thing you know, I was pretty much all the way in the baby swing. Okay, haha, she's laughing, I'm laughing, all is well and good, except for when Mama decides it's time to get out of the baby swing. Well, guess who could not get out of the baby swing? And it was high enough off the ground that I couldn't even really use leverage to push myself out. And I'm thinking the jaws of life are going to have to come and cut me out of this thing. This is not going to end well. And finally, what we ended up doing is my husband was there. He ended up having to essentially lie down on the ground so I could step on him. And I had to push up and out while he pulled down. And I ended up with a pretty good bruise on my leg from that, as you can imagine. But That time where I was stuck in a baby swing in my, mid to late 40s was without a doubt my most embarrassing parenting moment. I give it 0 stars and do not try this at home, my friends.
You don't recommend. Okay.
No.
Fantastic. And maybe some other time we can ask about how you used your parenting skills to calm down and redirect car thieves. That's another story. But I thoroughly was invested in the story that you posted. So thank you.
Sure.
All right. So as far as the Confluence Parenting Podcast listeners, which could be a wide variety of parents, what's one last tidbit you'd like to leave them with before we close shop today?
Everybody on the planet is doing the best they can with the tools, skills, and emotional resources they have at the time. So we may know that intellectually, but when it comes to the nitty-gritty details of parenting, when your child is acting in some way that you didn't even think possible, and it's pulling up every trigger in your body, their behavior makes sense. They're doing the best they can with the emotional tools they have in the moment. So our job is to get curious about it and say, what's going on beneath the surface? And the flip side of that is you, the adult, all of your behavior makes sense too. So if you have a trigger, it's because you learned at some point in your life that thing, whatever it was, is unsafe or scary or overwhelming to you. You make sense every bit as much as your child does. So there's really kind of a no blame, no shame game that we have in parenting, because when everybody makes sense, we can work to understand each other and ourselves rather than condemn each other and ourselves. And the gentler we are with everybody in the picture, the more easily we can see what's really going on and get to the root cause of it, so that we can heal from it and it doesn't have to be a trigger for us anymore.
Fantastic. I love that. And the last thing, where can our listeners find you on the interwebs? Where can they find you?
On the interwebs, well, the book Peaceful Discipline is available in all of the places that you typically get books. My social media is all my name, Sarah, middle initial R, last name Moore. Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting, except for on Instagram, I'm Dandelion Seeds Positive Living, because the word parenting wouldn't fit. My website is dandelionseeds.com with a hyphen. It's dandelion-seeds.com. And I think that pretty much covers it.
Fantastic. Sarah, thank you so much for carving out time to hang out with me and to do a little bit of catching up and to provide some just inspiration and motivation for parents. So I appreciate your time. It is great seeing you again.
You too. Thanks, Brandon.
All right, thank you. All right, take care now. See you